Hi, this is Trevor DeVore, and I'm here to give you an update on what I've been working on with Levure. Over the last number of months, I've been converting a second application of mine over to the Levure framework. I had already finished converting one over, and I've been working on that application for a while. Now I had a second one. Now, as I worked on the second app, it had some slightly different needs. The second application that I was converting to Levure needed to be distributed both through my company's website, but also through the Mac App Store. And as I looked at the needs of preparing an application for the Mac App Store versus releasing through the website, I realized that there were certain files that needed to be included when you package the application up for distribution. There are certain files that had to be included for the Mac App Store that you didn't need in a desktop app. And there were certain from a desktop app that was coming from my website. And vice versa. There were some files that the app going through my website needed that the Mac App Store didn't need it. So in order to facilitate packaging up an application that had different file requirements, I added a new property to the app.yml file that the Levure packager will recognize and use to customize the output. Now, for those that aren't familiar, the packager in Levure that's what you use when you want to compile all your files into a standalone application that somebody can run. And as part of that process, a standalone can be built. If you have certain helpers installed with your Levure app, then you can actually build DMG files for distribution or prepare Windows installer files as well. So if we go over, this is the app.yml file for this app, and I'm going to take you to the helpers section. Now in the helpers section, I have some helpers, and for this app, there were 4 helpers that needed to be included for either the Mac App Store or for my company website version. They needed to be in one of those, but not the other. The first was an external called Mac App Store Tools. It's an external that I use for this app that provides some features, gives me access to some features that are specific to the Mac App Store. And as you can see underneath the entry for this helper, there's a property called Build Profiles Filter. And what that does is that tells the packager that this helper should only be included when you're packaging up a Mac App Store build version and the Mac App Store development version. So those 2 build profiles will include the Mac App Store Tools helper. If we scroll down, we see something that looks similar. It's a build. You see a couple build profiles filter properties down here, but notice that there's this exclamation mark in front of the Mac App Store and the Mac App Store development build profiles. That tells the packager that you should include this helper or this asset, whatever the asset might be, with every build profile except for the one listed. So drop DMG, that's a helper that creates a DMG file. INO setup is a helper that creates the Windows installer files. And I don't want to include those when I package up my app for the Mac App Store. So I include those there, and the packager will respect that when packaging up the app. So let's look at what that means in practice. So here is LiveCode, and I just wanted to show you the code, the commands that get executed to package up the application. levurePackageApplication is the command, and you can pass it a build profile. This would be build for the Mac. This would package up the Mac App Store version. You could also do Mac App Store development or release. These are all build profiles that I've defined in the app.yml file. If you scroll down under build profiles section, you'll see that there is a release, there's a Mac App Store, and there's a Mac App Store development. Okay, and just so you're aware, the difference between Mac App Store and Mac App Store development is really just the certificate that is used to sign the app that gets built. For the Mac App Store, if you want to test certain features such as Apple Pay or different things, you build your app, you sign it using a special certificate, and then you can use a sandbox iTunes account, iTunes Connect account to test all the features without actually charging yourself and things like that. So let's look at what gets built when we call this levurePackageApplication command. Here in the Finder, you can see in my builds folder for this app, there are some folders. There's a release, Mac App Store, Mac App Store Development. And if I expand those, you see for the Mac App Store, when I package that app up, both the application was built as well as a package that gets uploaded to iTunes Connect. That's the file that I actually upload to Apple that they will use to distribute the application. And that's signed and ready to go. It's signed with a special certificate, with a certificate that has a special prefix. And that would be ready to go and upload to Apple. For Mac App Store Development, the package isn't required, so I just built the application itself. If I were to launch that, I would get prompted for an iTunes account to verify that I should be able to access the app. I could go through all my testing and check that out. And then finally, under the release, this is where we see that a Windows version was built. The DMG was built. Here's the ISS file that I would use to open an INO setup on Windows and build the Windows installer. There was this PS vince.dll file that was included as well, that was not part of the Mac App Store. So here, just by updating by configuring what I needed in the app.yml file, I am able to completely customize the output so that I'm getting the output I need for my different delivery targets. One thing I'll show you if we see, I think it's under Mac App Store. Yeah, the other feature I've added is a platform filter. And so for the Mac App Store, I don't want to build the Windows version of the app, but for the version that I distribute through my website, I do. And so I can I can define the platform filter. In this case, I say I just want to build for Mac OS. And the same for Mac App Store Development. Just build for Mac OS, don't build for Windows. And that's why in the Mac App Store version, you don't see a Windows folder that wasn't added to it. So there you go. That's a new feature that's coming to Levure. It's not, as of today, August 20th. It has not been released yet. It's still in. It's a branch in GitHub that hasn't been rolled into the master branch yet, but it will be coming soon. And then you'll be able to customize how your apps get packaged up as well. And you may find other uses for this. For example, I don't know if people work this way, but maybe you have an app that has both a mobile and a desktop user interface, and everything else is shared. Well, you could, in the UI section, you could have, let's see, so if you go to UI, you could have UI files that were specific to mobile and some UI files that were specific to desktop, and you could use the build profiles property to only include the mobile files for one build profile, and then to only include the desktop UI elements for another build profile. So there could be a lot of uses for this, but especially if you're developing for different, you're delivering through different stores or your website, the build profiles filter and the platform filter are useful features for customizing the output.